Simply Red, Buzzcocks, Ludus, The Passage, and Joy Division. Bernard Sumner from Joy Division and New Order.
We always liked groups and music, but we didn't particularly want to be in a group until we saw the Sex Pistols, and we thought, God, if they can do it, we can do it. So I had a guitar that my mother had bought me when I was 16, and we used to go in my grandmother's front parlour, and she had a 1940s gramophone. So I pulled the needle out, soldered a jack socket on the stylus arm, plugged my guitar into the needle of this gramophone. Then I put another socket on when Hooky got his bass, and we've played through that.
Hooky.
The thing about the two Sex Pistols concerts were that, like the first one, there was hardly anybody there. There's only about 50 people. And all the people that mattered were there. I mean, you can look around in the groups, you know, most of the groups in Manchester today, and all the people were at that gig. And so we got to know them all. And as, like, the Buzzcocks moved on and started doing gigs, we knew them. So it was, like, inevitable that, you know, Pete Shelley had asked us to support them, which was our first gig, supporting the Buzzcocks at Electric Circus. So it was just the way it progressed from just messing about, quite luckily, to the people that you knew who had started doing it, and they just brought you into it.
Martin Hannett was not a record producer when he saw the Pistols. He soon would be, for Buzzcocks and Joy Division. I was there, and within months was inspired to achieve my ambition of writing for the New Musical Express. And Wilson was there, looking as out of place as Quentin Crisp at a Clash show. But he was as galvanised as anyone, and within weeks he had booked the Pistols onto So It Goes, where he proudly introduced them as the most reviled phenomena of recent weeks. March 1978, 3 months after the cancellation of So It Goes, left Wilson with unfulfilled desires to get more directly involved with pop culture. Joy Division, after just a couple of gigs with their new name, were one of nearly 20 local acts taking part in a talent competition. It had been organised by 2 London record labels, Stiff and Chiswick. It was the Stiff Chiswick Challenge. At that time, the fantastically ambitious but very provisional Joy Division felt unloved and ignored by their hometown. And singer Ian Curtis, loaded with his favourite drink, Carlsberg's Special Brew, was in a particularly angry mood. Curtis spotted Wilson, still viewed with suspicion as the would-be groovy telly idiot even after So It Goes, and took out a lot of his frustration on the hapless minor celebrity. Bernard Sumner.
Ian was very, he was one of the most polite people you could meet until he was on stage, or he'd had a few drinks maybe. And this Stiff Chiswick thing, everyone hated us in Manchester, and we got billed top of the bill, which we thought was great, until we realised it closed at 12, and you know, like only half the groups had been on at 11 o'clock. So Ian just went berserk, absolutely berserk.
Tony Wilson, some years ago.
Early in the evening, I can remember sitting on a bench near the pool table, and a guy coming over in a grey gabardine raincoat. I remember the raincoat. In fact, there are photographs from that era of Ian in that. And Ian sat down next to me and said, "You." I said, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." And he says, "Yeah. Why aren't we on television? You put the rest of these crap things on television." So Ian sat down and began having a real go at me, and I vaguely knew he was Joy Division. The evening went on, and all the groups played, and then at 2:10, the final group got on stage, played, I remember 2, some people say it was 3 numbers, I can't remember, and were then thrown off and the plugs pulled. And that was Joy Division. And I thought, well, that's it, very simple. I've watched 13 groups who are on stage because they want to be on stage and they would like to be pop stars and they like the idea of that. And I watched one group who had something to say.
By then, Wilson, with actor friend Alan Erasmus, had already started planning what would become Factory Records, named because of the region's industrial past, because of Andy Warhol's New York Arts Centre, and because Erasmus noticed that in a declining post-war Manchester, factories were always closing. So why not open one? In an unlovely, unlovable part of Hume, inside a local working men's club called The Russell, they opened the Factory nightclub on Fridays to showcase the new local talent that was still forming following the Pistols shows. It opened, attended by a few curious souls, on May the 19th, 1978, with performances from the Wilson and Erasmus managed avant ambient Durutti column and punk novelty act Jilted John. 3 weeks later, Joy Division played. A bright yellow poster advertising the first factory shows was designed by local design student Peter Saville. It was as bright as the sun, because at the time everything in Manchester seemed to be happening under dark, threatening clouds. The poster was given a catalogue number by Saville, FAC 1.
The authorities had found one reason or another to close almost every venue in Manchester, and Tony took it upon himself as a kind of champion of the cause to make a venue. I was in my final year at art college and just desperately wanted to do something and to be involved. So I went and waited in the lobby of Granada Television one day until he appeared and said, "Mr. Wilson, can I speak to you?" I took a couple of books from the sort of shelf of the college library, books that no one had had out for years, and I took those and we sat in the canteen at Granada, and I opened the books and said, I want to do something like this. And he took a cursory glance and said, "That would be good." And he said, "Okay, do a poster." So I did a poster, I did the first factory poster, and that led to a second and a third.
The Durutti column were put together as a kind of avant-garde boy band, featuring musicians who would eventually join Mick Hucknall in Simply Red, but it would quickly become the solo project of Vinnie Riley. Riley's distressed guitar-playing delicacy, emotionally recorded by Martin Hannett, would be an essential element of the sound of Factory, even if it was a million sound years away from how Erasmus and Wilson originally imagined their dream group.
It's do what you want to do and then figure out why you did it afterwards. You know, we wanted our group, the Durutti Column, to play in a club. There was no clubs we liked, so we started a club and called it The Factory. Then we wanted to put a record out. There was no one to put a record out, so we put a record out. It's just doing what you want. You can think of a million reasons afterwards. I can think of 2 million, but basically we just did what at that moment seemed the thing to do.
The Factory Club became a label by the end of 1978 with the release of a Factory Sample, a double 7-inch 9-track single featuring the newly atmospheric and Martin Hannett-produced Joy Division, Cabaret Voltaire, John Dowie and the Durutti Column. Saville designed a flashy futuristic sleeve. It cost £1.50. It was financed by some money that Wilson's grandmother had left him. It eventually sold out of its limited run and made an 80 quid profit. Wilson's Factory was somehow open for business.
Durutti Column started as a 5-piece band or 6-piece band, but it was very, very arty and very pretentious. We did about 3 or 4 gigs, and I kind of left the band because I couldn't bear the pretentiousness and the we're so hip and all that stuff. So I just left and wrote a letter to Tony and a letter to the band saying I was leaving. And to my amazement, Tony and Alan Erasmus, who was his business partner, they just kind of came around to where I was living and said, well, no, you're Durutti Column. These other guys are not. And they became Simply Red's backing band, and I just did these little tunes. So I was just very lucky.
Riotous, sardonic club DJ Rob Gretton, previously a Slaughter and the Dogs enthusiast, had spotted the potential of Joy Division at the Stiff Chiswick Challenge. He instantly decided to manage them, and instantly became their important, organising, motivating 5th member. Joy Division signed with Factory Records, not so much because no one else wanted them, but because Gretton had fallen in with Wilson's plans, and it suited what was becoming a local crusade that the group stay with Factory after the release of the sampler.
Warsaw, or Joy Division, whatever they were called in them days, didn't go on till about, I think it was gone 2 in the morning. It was around 2 anyway, when most people had left, and there was only like 20 or 30 people left. And I just thought they were the best band I'd ever seen. And that night I couldn't sleep very well because I was thinking about it all the time. And I was going on to my girlfriend about it in the morning. And I went into town the next day to do some shopping or something. And in the next booth in the phone, I went to the phone boxes on, where is it? Spring Gardens. And Barney was in the next phone booth, and I tapped him on the shoulder and said, have you got a manager? And he said, no. And I said, do you fancy me being your manager? I think he knew I was a DJ at Rafters.
Wilson and Erasmus's second experimental boy band, designed for their initially theoretical record label, were called A Certain Ratio, This group taking their